A cult claiming to be a church brainwashed nearly 40 members of his congregation to fast and starve to death so they could see Jesus. He even went as far as threatening them that if they don't die before August of 2023, they would face the wrath of God and die a very painful death. And that's not all. He encourages and oversees parents starving their children to death. Members are forbidden from going to school, going to work, and going to the hospital. At the time of making this video, the 22nd of April, 2023, 14 bodies had been exhumed from 7 grave sites, bringing the number to 21 bodies that have been so far dug up over the past 2 days in the church large farmland. More bodies are suspected to have been buried in shallow graves. This is so unreal, but it's happening. Stick around, let me unveil the story to you. A story like no other. Paul Mackenzie, the most evil pastor in the world. In the small town of Shakahola village in Kenya, there lives Paul Mackenzie Nthenge, the leader of Good News International Church. I'm not going to call it a church because this is not in any way the Church of God. He told his congregation to embark on a fast. This is not the fasting you know of because this fasting has no end. It's a fast for life. He calls it fast until you see God. This is a dangerous doctrine that Paul Mackenzie preaches, encouraging his followers to starve themselves to death in order to reach heaven faster. It is very, very funny to believe this, that you can starve to death just to meet with God faster. Eventually, his followers, made up of a fluctuating number of people, including men, women, and children, instantly began fasting. He wanted to make sure that the fasting was effective, so he picked 15 of his members and kept them in a house where he could most likely monitor them. I'm not talking about kids here. I'm talking about 15 adults, men and women, kept in a special compound to fast, voluntarily to death, so they could see God before August. Well, things blew up when concerned neighbors who were living near this compound housing the 15 members' church called the police. You know, when you see people fast, you most likely want to leave them undisturbed to observe their spiritual obligations, because true fasting is a spiritual exercise. But the neighbors had noticed the people were losing weight and refusing to eat, and at the same time struggling with their health. Many of them have been said to be fasting for nearly 20 days without food, and they were so dedicated. But these neighbors were so concerned that they could not even look at this anymore. It became a thing of stupidity for them, and instantly they felt, okay, it's high time we interfere. The neighbors got fed up, especially when they learned that these people are fasting because Pastor Paul Mackenzie instructed them to fast. Yes, they were not held in captivity. There was no gun pointing at them, but if you ever find a group of people fasting themselves to death, the right thing to do is to call the police. So on the 13th of April, 2023, the police were informed, and instantly the police came swinging and they were rescued from the house. An ambulance was called and they were rushed to the hospital. Sadly, during the rescue, 4 of them died on the spot. Many of them could not talk. Some of them could not walk, and some were laying kinda lifeless. But what is ironic is that Pastor Mackenzie was not at the property when the police arrived. The truth is, he is not fasting. This is deception at its peak. The following day, after the members were rescued, Pastor Mackenzie turned himself in to the police. Take a look at him. He doesn't look like someone that was fasting as the leader of the group. In fact, he is not remorseful anywhere. And in his mind, he has not done anything wrong. According to him, he has a direct prophecy from God, and he does not force anyone to believe him. I mean, look at this guy. You can tell that this is not his first time brainwashing people in the name of religion for his personal gains. Apart from the 15 people who were found, many other members of his congregation died and were buried quietly before this discovery. Members dying mysteriously and being buried secretly is common among sect leaders. If you look at the history of cult churches, you will find that killing opposing members and mass suicide is a common scenario. And the interesting part of this story is that this is not his first time doing something mischievous. In 2017, he was arrested with a group of secondary school students, along with some university school students, even primary school students, and little children between the age of 10 to 20 years, whom he had brainwashed into dropping out of school. It's not clear what he was doing with them, but he just kept them around and told them to stop going to school. Can you imagine that? He not just told them to stop going to school, he gathered and housed them so he can control their movement. And it was reported to the police, and the people were rescued. At this point, you will agree with me that there's something wrong with this man. How would a sane man gather children and teenagers and stop them from going to school? And the words from the community are that this religious group, part of the membership criteria is that members are to shun modern medicine and shun modern education. So as a member, you are not supposed to go to the hospital when you are sick, and you are not supposed to go to school. The heartbreaking part is he has followers, people believing in him, even to the point of fasting to death. How are people like this able to convince people to do their bidding? Oh, I forgot to tell you that he was also arrested for not sending his own children to school. And in 2019, he and his wife were arrested for inciting violence. And as a result, the police closed down the church and also had to terminate their television channel license. What did he do? He moved away from the community and went to a place where they call Shakahola Village, where he had a farm, a big farm, and Chakama Ranch. But that did not stop followers who were obsessed with him from following him. Some even relocated with him. He allocated his followers some of the lands to build structures to live there. Before this, in March this year, detectives raided Mackenzie's semi-permanent house and arrested him in connection with the deaths of 2 children a week earlier. According to investigations, he convinced a husband and wife to starve. It is in his house that Mackenzie has been shaping the beliefs of his followers, some of who are now being investigated for alleged horrific crimes, including starving and killing their children and later burying them in shallow graves. Guess who else is the suspect? The parents of the children. Isaac Ngala and Mrs. Emily Kaunga, the children's parents. Court documents allege that the two, on advice from Mackenzie, had starved and suffocated the children, Seth Hinzano and Avabradito, to death and buried them in a shallow grave at Shakahola Village. The police managed to rescue a 3rd child. The rescued child narrated the sufferings his 2 siblings underwent after being starved for some time before their mother suffocated them to death. After being bailed out of prison, what happens next will shock you. 15 people were caught stabbing themselves in the house under his orders. Could you believe that? He instructed 15 people to stab themselves, and they started doing that. If not for the swift response of the security agency, they could have killed themselves. And some were admitted to the hospital. You know what? One of the people admitted to the hospital said that he will continue to follow Pastor Mackenzie, and nothing can stop him. Just imagine the depth in which these people have been deceived. They don't even have a mind of their own any longer, despite the many atrocities and crimes which the pastor has committed. His followers regard him as God. So far, 12 graves have been found on Mackenzie Farm. A member of the community said Mackenzie hired a lorry to relocate some of the followers who were in critical condition. He said it headed towards the Sosobora Malanga area. He called on the government to advance the search to the Malanga area and look for the vehicle, as there could be more people who have died. At the time of making this video, the 22nd of April, 2023, 14 bodies had been exhumed from 7 grave sites, bringing the number to 21 bodies that have been so far dug up over the past 2 days in the church large farmland. More bodies are suspected to have been buried in shallow graves. You may think that the people he deceived are illiterates and common villagers, but that's far from the truth, as most of his followers are educated, and some were even working in big corporations before meeting the pastor. Some even left their jobs to become Pastor Mackenzie's disciples, which of course cost them their jobs. To what gain are they sacrificing all to be with Pastor Mackenzie? The ultimate goal is to see Jesus. Even though he's been arrested, but I'm sure he will be out from the police net before you know. It's not his first time, and technically some people can argue that he didn't hurt anyone. These people starved themselves voluntarily. Of course, he manipulated them with his words, but I can't seem to trust the African judiciary to do the right thing and lock up this monster for life. This is indeed a sign of the end times. The scriptures say that in later times, some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and the teachings of demons. This is happening right before our eyes. Many are now worshiping Satan and demons without even knowing. These are Christians that don't read their Bibles yet. They rely on others to tell them what it is that the Bible says. And so many mainstream pastors don't preach what people need to be saved. This is one of those stories you wished it is not true, but it's happening in 2023, leaving many questions in our minds. Would he stay in prison forever? Would he be convicted for the death of the 4 people who died of starvation under his orders? This is a case to really look forward to, how it turns out. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated, as I will be following up on this issue. Before you scroll over to other videos, let me know your thoughts about this man. Do you think he is using charm to control his members? Can someone naturally have such influence over people to the point of asking them to stab themselves? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching the video.